Cleared of all sexual assault charges, Kevin Spacey walks free from court. The star had faced lurid accusations from 4 men, losing his reputation and his fortune as he fought to clear his name. Today, his relief and his emotion were clear.
I'm enormously grateful to the jury, and I am humbled by the outcome today.
Well, it has been a spectacular fall from grace for the actor who once hit the Hollywood heights. So can he rebuild his ruined career? Also tonight. Cleared at last of a rape he had always denied. How new DNA evidence freed an innocent man after 20 years. After the resignation of NatWest CEO, we assess the impact of Coots-Farage fiasco. At 7, the alarming risks of cosmetic surgery abroad. A special report on how cut-price ops can go horribly wrong. And
it'll be home time before you know it.
85 years of mischief. The Beano celebrates its big birthday with the help of some famous friends.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The Hollywood star Kevin Spacey wept in the dock today as he was cleared of all charges of sexual assault. The actor and former artistic director of London's famous Old Vic Theatre had vehemently denied the 9 accusations levelled against him by 4 separate men. When the not guilty verdicts came in after nearly 12 and a half hours of deliberations, a tearful Mr. Spacey mouthed the words, "Thank you, thank you," to the jury. Outside court, Mr. Spacey said he had been humbled by the jury's decision. From Southwark Crown Court, Chloe Keedy reports.
This Hollywood actor came to Southwark Crown Court to clear his name. After a trial lasting more than 3 weeks, today he walked out for a final time with relief etched on his face after a jury found him not guilty of 9 sexual offences.
I imagine that many of you can understand that there's a lot for me to process after what has just happened today. But I would like to say that I'm enormously grateful to the jury for having taken the time to examine all of the evidence and all of the facts carefully before they reached their decision. And I am humbled by the outcome today.
Kevin Spacey was accused of 9 sexual offences against 4 different men. Many of them were alleged to have happened during his time living in London and working as artistic director at the Old Vic Theatre. One of his accusers said Spacey had assaulted him as he drove the actor to a party hosted by Elton John, who was among those called to court to give evidence in his defence.
As those 9 not guilty verdicts were read out, Kevin Spacey started to cry. Afterwards, he turned to the jury, put his hand on his chest and mouthed the words thank you to them before they left the room.
But the Oscar-winning actor, who's known for his role in films like American Beauty and the long-running series House of Cards, says the case has destroyed his reputation, although there are some that believe he can rebuild his career.
Kevin Spacey can absolutely redeem himself. I think he's already been redeemed by this verdict. And certainly when these allegations came out in the height of Me Too, there was a willingness to immediately believe anyone that made accusations. But now we've seen the effect of that and that we need to take more time.
There is no doubting his celebrity status, but as Kevin Spacey left court today on his 64th birthday, he may have done so wondering what the future now holds.
Well, it took the jury just over 12 hours to reach those verdicts, but Kevin Spacey has had court proceedings of some kind hanging over his head for years. Last year there was a civil case brought against him in America, but the man that accused him then lost. This, of course, was a criminal case, and the Crown prosecution who brought the charges has said today that it respects the decision of the court. Well, Kevin Spacey has said he now needs time to process what has happened and to try and rebuild his life.
OK, Chloe Keedy at Southwark Crown Court. Thank you. And moving on now, an innocent man was cleared by the Court of Appeal today after serving 17 years behind bars for a rape he did not commit. Andrew Malkinson, who's now 57, was found guilty of raping a woman in Greater Manchester in 2003. But new DNA evidence has helped overturn that verdict. In a powerful statement outside court, Mr Malkinson described how he had proclaimed his innocence all along, but was never believed. Rebecca Barry reports.
He spent 17 years in prison waiting for this moment. Today, the Royal Courts of Justice put right an historic injustice. Andrew Malkinson, wrongly accused of rape, finally has his name cleared.
They claimed I was in denial and made me serve an extra 10 more years in prison because I would not make a false confession. I am not a liar. I am not in denial. But I will tell you who is. Greater Manchester Police are liars, and they are in denial.
Almost exactly 20 years ago, a woman was raped here in Greater Manchester. Andrew Malkinson was convicted and jailed for life. There was no DNA evidence linking him to the crime, the case based entirely on identification evidence.
The appellant has spent 17 years, 4 months and 16 days in prison, we submit, for a crime he did not commit.
Fresh forensic evidence shows another man is 1 billion times more likely than not to be the source of DNA found on a top worn by the victim during the attack. The victim said she scratched her attacker's face with her left hand, breaking a nail. Police photographs, only disclosed many years later, show a nail on her left hand was shorter. Andrew Malkinson had no facial injury. And the jury wasn't told of the criminal histories of 2 witnesses who identified Andrew Malkinson. This afternoon, 20 years since the crime, came the judge's decision. Andrew Malkinson did not commit it.
We have no doubt that the new evidence shows these convictions to be unsafe, and we quash the convictions.
Another man has now been arrested, but no decision's been made as to whether he'll be charged. Outside court, Andrew Malkinson spoke to the other person in this case, denied justice.
I am so sorry that you were attacked and brutalised that night by that man. I am not the person who attacked you. But what happened to me is not your fault. I'm so sorry if my fight for the truth, as I knew it to be, has caused you extra trauma. I'm so sorry that the system has let you down.
Today, Greater Manchester Police said, "We are truly sorry to Mr Malkinson that he is the victim of such a grave miscarriage of justice in being convicted of a crime he did not commit and serving a 17-year custodial sentence. Whilst we hope this outcome gives him a long overdue sense of justice, we acknowledge that it does not return the years he has lost." His lawyers say no amount of compensation could make up for the injustice he's suffered. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Wildfires are still raging tonight in countries around the Mediterranean, destroying properties and threatening yet more lives, with extreme heat and tinderbox conditions gripping huge swathes of southern Europe and northern Africa. Emergency services in several countries have already been fighting the flames for days. At least 34 people have died in Algeria, with fires spreading from there into Tunisia. And the wildfires are continuing in several areas of Greece. Tonight, a state of emergency has been declared for the entire island of Rhodes, where 10,000 British holidaymakers had to flee the flames. From there, our senior international correspondent John Irvine has the latest.
The mountaintop fire looked like a warning beacon of old, and who knows, perhaps it was one from nature. Here on Rhodes today, the wildfires were again guilty of conspicuous consumption as they advanced through the trees and foliage unhindered. The slopes were too precipitous for the fire crews to operate up there, and they'd have no water supply anyway. So they had to wait for the fires to reach them, which they eventually did, threatening to make impassable the roads that cut through the valleys here. But waiting allows the flames to be wildly unpredictable, and efforts to protect villages backfired somewhat overnight when the community of Gennady was in the gravest of danger. It was as close to going up in smoke as you can get, and were it not for a Herculean effort by the emergency services and volunteers, then it probably would have. The battle to save the place went on this morning, but save it they did. Manolis is one of the volunteer firemen sorely tested by events on this island. It's like living through a nightmare, because you're seeing the places you grew up in burn down, and we don't have nearly enough help, he said. Today, a wind shift saw the fires retreat from the east coast, destroying much of what they'd missed on their way here. Human beings aren't the only residents who'll be hoping the flames go away, along with the heat wave that sustained them, but that has not happened yet. Over the last fortnight, at least 50 new wildfires have broken out across Greece each and every day. That means the emergency services have had to battle more than 700 fires during this crisis. From where I'm standing on the island of Rhodes right now, I can count 5 new fires. Greece has been honouring the 2 pilots killed when their water-bombing plane crashed yesterday. The men will be laid to rest tomorrow, although many of their colleagues will be unable to attend, for they'll be continuing their essential and heroic work. John Irvine, ITV News, Rhodes.
Well, here, Dame Alison Rose, the embattled CEO of NatWest, stood down in the middle of the night last night in the latest twist in the row over Nigel Farage's finances. She had earlier admitted that she had been the source of an inaccurate story about his account with the bank Coutts, part of the NatWest group. It appeared Dame Alison had lost the support of NatWest's main shareholder, the government. And Mr Farage, the former anti-EU campaigner, says more heads should roll. Our business editor Joel Hills has the story.
She said she'd stay, and then suddenly she went. Under pressure and in the middle of the night, the first female chief executive of a major British bank agreed to stand down. The man who called for Alison Rose to go now wants the board that initially backed her to resign too.
The board are there to act in the interests of all. We're all shareholders in this through our taxes. They made a bad decision. They backed up a dishonest action. No, frankly, that board is not fit for purpose.
Alison Rose has gone with immediate effect. NatWest's chairman described it as a sad moment and said she had the respect and admiration of many colleagues. She joined the bank in 1992 as a graduate. She went on to run Royal Bank of Scotland's Europe, Middle East and Africa operations, then becoming deputy chief executive of NatWest before getting the top job in 2019. Last year, Alison Rose was paid £5.2 million. The bank hasn't yet said what the financial terms of her severance are. Yesterday, Alison Rose admitted she was the source of an inaccurate BBC report which stated that the private bank Coutts had shut Nigel Farage's accounts, not for political reasons, but because he was no longer wealthy enough.
This document proves that was wrong.
Farage challenged the story. He later obtained an internal report showing his political views had been a consideration. Today, the bosses of all the big banks were summoned to the Treasury. The government wants them to be more open with customers whose accounts are shut down, but it doesn't want any more resignations at NatWest.
The chairman of NatWest is already stepping down. There's already a search underway, as you know, for his replacement. We should let that continue. It is important that lessons are learned. It's not the duty of banks to tell us what to think and what political views we can have.
NatWest has appointed an interim chief executive and is promising an independent investigation into the closure of Nigel Farage's accounts. Anyone who works in financial services is obliged to act with integrity and to treat their customers fairly. The Financial Conduct Authority has welcomed the independent investigation. If a serious breach of the rules is uncovered, the FCA has the power to launch an investigation of its own, which could lead to fines or bans for individuals or organisations.
The chief executive of Lloyds this morning said he would never close or refuse to open an account based on a person's political or personal beliefs.
How very interesting, because that's one bank I'm still talking to.
Nigel Farage says he still doesn't have a bank account in Britain and that 8 banks have turned him down. But will the Black Horse ride to the rescue?
All right, well, Joel's here. This time yesterday, the thinking was that Alison Rose would hang on. So what happened?
Well, look, Alison Rose admitted a serious error of judgment. She hoped an apology would be enough. The board of NatWest backed her and then U-turned when the Prime Minister and the Chancellor made it clear that they were deeply disapproving. And I think from the moment that it became obvious that the biggest shareholder, the bank's biggest shareholder, the taxpayer, had lost confidence in her, she wasn't long for this world. I mean, Nigel Farage has won a great victory. He claims the battle, though, is continuing. He says, it's worth remembering, he was kicked out of Coutts, right? This is a bank for the well-heeled. Today, he says, though, he's fighting on behalf of tens of thousands of ordinary households and small businesses up and down the country who've had their accounts closed. 50 million people in the UK, Mary, have a bank account, a current account. Every year, the Financial Ombudsman receives around 1,400 complaints from people who feel they've had their accounts closed unfairly. That's smaller businesses too.
Not tens of thousands.
Not tens of thousands.
No, okay.
Of those, 3/4 are rejected. Last year, NatWest and Barclays were the worst offenders. Lloyds and HSBC did have far fewer complaints. What's clear tonight is that Nigel Farage has been treated absolutely shabbily by NatWest. It's less clear that debanking is the major banking crisis, he claims.
OK. Joel Hills, thank you. OK, well, there is plenty more still to come in the ITV Evening News, including...
I swear by the Gita.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I shall give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
PM put on the spot. Bereaved families of those given contaminated blood in the 70s and 80s continue their fight for compensation.
We've completely lost our family, and the chances of bringing up a family just gone.
Families left on the edge in Wales after funding for free school meals is cut. And dreams of a brighter future turned into an ongoing nightmare. The lives scarred by botched cosmetic surgeries done overseas. Well, it is a growing trend leading to spiralling costs for the NHS and real heartache at home. We will have that and more after the break. Welcome back. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was heckled and mocked today when he appeared before the infected blood inquiry. He was vowing the government would pay compensation as soon as possible to victims of the contaminated blood scandal between 1970 and 1991. Thousands of people were infected with contaminated blood products imported from the US, and it's estimated nearly 27,000 people contracted hepatitis C, with nearly 2,000 dying of related causes by 2019. 1,350 people were infected with HIV. Around half of those have died from related causes. Well, let's get more now from our political correspondent, Culdinan.
It is highly unusual to hear a sitting Prime Minister give evidence under oath, Rishi Sunak swearing on the Hindu holy book.
I swear by the Gita.
I swear by the Gita
that the evidence I shall give.
that the evidence I shall give.
The Prime Minister began by expressing his sympathy to all those infected and affected by contaminated blood.
I believe what has happened has been an appalling scandal. I think thousands of people, obviously many in the room today and others that the Chair referred to who are watching, have suffered for decades.
Richard was first given infected blood products when he was 11 or 12. Over the course of his teenage years, he was infected with hepatitis B, Hep C and HIV. Later, when his wife became pregnant, they were advised to terminate the pregnancy.
We heeded the warning and took the advice to have the baby terminated. And that was the most heart-wrenching, dreadful decision I think either of us had to make. We completely lost our family, and the chances of bringing up a family just gone, just shattered.
What do you want to hear from the Prime Minister today?
He will doubtless apologise, saying that he's working at pace. The pace of what I don't know.
Working at pace is a term survivors have heard over so many years that it now provokes bitter laughter.
And that work continues at pace. Again, the minister responsible is the Minister of the Cabinet Office.
It was not the only time victims made their feelings known in the inquiry.
Is that good enough?
I think what I'd say is, of course, people want to see.
Following an interim report, the government made interim payments to some, but not all, victims. But it's waiting for the final report before making final payments.
Good policy making and legal advice would suggest that it's important for government to have the full findings of an independent inquiry before making final decisions.
But the inquiry has recommended victims start getting their full compensation, and the Prime Minister didn't offer that.
We've heard it all before. He didn't answer any straight questions, and I don't think he had an intention of answering them.
Victims are thought to be dying at a rate of 1 every 4 days now. They don't have a lot of patience because they don't have a lot of time. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
Now, an official investigation has found systemic failings in England's second biggest housing association, including poor treatment of disabled tenants. The inquiry, to be published tomorrow, also revealed that the association, L&Q, tried to make a tenant sign a confidentiality agreement before paying compensation. Well, our investigations correspondent Daniel Hewitt has seen the report, which would appear to be pretty damning, yeah?
It's the most damning report I've seen into a housing association. L&Q are a big player in this, second biggest in the country, 250,000 tenants right across England. Their turnover last year, Mary, was over £1 billion. But this report finds systemic failing, as you say. We have reported on L&Q on this programme before, and we can show some of the conditions that we found in L&Q properties. This report says that they were unduly heavy-handed in complaints, that they caused prolonged distress and confusion to its tenants. In one case, as you mentioned, they withheld compensation to a tenant unless they assigned a confidentiality clause in their tenancy agreement, which was heavily criticised by the Housing Ombudsman. In another case, they said it won't be too long until we appear on ITV again if we don't get across this. One of the big concerns from the Ombudsman is, as you say, is their treatment of disabled tenants and vulnerable tenants. This is what he had to say to us.
Disabilities, mental health, having children in a property. There are lots of reasons why the circumstances of the household mean that the landlord needs to respond differently. And those are not necessarily being recognised, they're not being responded to, and they're not being recorded to make sure that the landlord's actions are consistent. And that is troubling.
Now, L&Q say in this report, we recognise we got things wrong and welcome this extremely valuable learning process. They say they've overhauled the complaints handling process and say they've apologised for completely unacceptable service to the tenants featured in this inquiry.
OK. It no doubt continues. Daniel, thank you. There is a row tonight over a decision by the Welsh Government to cut funding for free school meals during the summer holidays. It says the scheme was always time limited and the cash has now run out. The critics have called the move morally unacceptable. Here's our Wales correspondent, Rhys Williams.
Right, we're ready. Can you open the gate for me, Ive?
The summer break should be full of fun, but this year is proving a challenge.
Each bill that comes through seems to be that little bit extra. Every time I do a food shop, it seems to be that little bit more than it normally is. Putting petrol in the car constantly. It just feels like there's a snowball of everything all together that piles up.
For families like the Williamses, free school meals are a lifeline. But just weeks before the holidays this year, the Welsh Government unexpectedly cut the funding.
We're in a really nice community where people do look out for each other and everyone kind of knows each other. But still it's that difficulty and kind of that embarrassment for some people to be, I am really struggling.
1 in 5 children in every Welsh county lives in poverty. In the ex-mining village of Resolven, where the Williams family live, it's nearly 1 in 4. Carin's local community hub has already seen a significant increase in demand for support, with the decision to cut funding also affecting the staff.
A mother myself, 2 children. I was having £39 a week towards towards meals in the holidays. So I'm feeling that pinch as well personally, and I think that's why we see the importance of the community projects and the community days and providing meals and activities for the children.
Full house. Wales became the first UK nation to promise free school meals for all children in primary school, a move announced with much fanfare. The decision to axe funding to the poorest children over the summer break has been heavily criticised.
I know this is a difficult time financially and politicians have to make very difficult choices, but this is unfortunately a choice that they have made, and I think it's a morally unacceptable choice.
This afternoon, the First Minister told us he doesn't accept that criticism.
I don't agree with her, of course. Nothing that we do isn't important to somebody. If we had more money, we would do more things. These are very difficult choices, but they're choices that in the end have to be made.
Tough decisions for politicians, tough times for families like those in Resolven, missing out on much-needed money for the kids this summer. Rhys Williams, ITV News, the Neath Valley.
You're watching the ITV Evening News. It's just gone 7 o'clock now, and here's what's still ahead before Emmerdale. Open for business, but for how much longer? We'll be looking at the impact of the potential closure of train ticket offices.
More passengers will be relying more heavily on ticket machines like this. But just look, there's a whole list here of things that it can't do.
The iconic comic celebrating 85 years with some famous faces joining the fold. And
I've been finding out why exercises like this one could be more beneficial than any others when it comes to our health.
Sizzling June versus a drizzly July. How we've not had a summer like this since 1970. We'll have the full forecast coming up later in the programme.
Well, all of that still to come, but first we report on the growing risk to people's health and indeed the spiralling cost to the NHS of botched cosmetic surgery carried out abroad. ITV News has been given exclusive access to alarming new data about a problem that appears to be on the rise. More and more patients, it seems, are needing hospital treatment here in the UK once they return from operations overseas. Now, the annual cost to the NHS is being counted in the millions. But even worse, as Rachel Younger reports, are the devastating and sometimes even fatal consequences.
Included to nights in hospital into nights.
This is social media at its most seductive. Hospitals that look more like hotels, influencers selling the dream of sunshine and surgery. And like many others, Sophie, a single mum who'd long struggled to lose weight, wanted in.
She was such a big, loud, bubbly part of it. It came from nowhere. She just basically said, I've been looking online and I'm thinking of going off and having like a tummy tuck and liposuction. She'd had enough of trying to do diets, they failed, and she just said she wanted to look $1 million.
So in March of last year, Sophie travelled to Istanbul with a friend, but the excited pre-op selfies soon turned into worrying post-op videos. This was the last time Amy ever saw her sister. The next call came from a hospital worker.
He said, your sister's okay, but she's not all right, which I said, I don't understand. What does that mean? Is she conscious? He said, no, she's in intensive care. So I said, well, what's happened? Because she was fine this morning. And he said, something to do with her heart. But you just need to come out here.
The 34-year-old had suffered a cardiac arrest. She was dead by the time Amy arrived, to find Sophie's friend discharged to a hotel, alone and desperately ill.
I walked up the corridor and I kid you not, the smell, I could smell from halfway along the corridor. I was literally heaving. And then she's just on the bed, she's shivering, she's sweating, she's upset, she's saying she doesn't, she doesn't want to die like my sister. It was just horrible.
Had you not been there, her friend would have died too?
There's a possibility, yeah. When they went to sew her back up, because of the amount of skin they'd had to cut away, because it was dead skin, she didn't have enough skin to sew her back up. So she had to have a skin graft. So now she's been left, completely not okay.
She's not alone. The number of people needing hospital treatment in the UK after getting cosmetic surgery abroad has shot up by 94% in 3 years. And in the past 6 months, more than 3/4 of the corrective operations here have been related to treatments carried out in Turkey. It's estimated the cost to the NHS last year alone was £1.7 million.
One extreme, we've got stories of patients needing to be admitted to the intensive care unit, and following that they have to go to the operating theatre multiple times. That places a huge burden and a huge cost burden through to others who fortunately can be treated with antibiotics or minor surgery, and a huge gulf and range of procedures in between.
So that we are not focusing on the hair follicles.
There are, of course, as doctors in Turkey point out, many procedures carried out there that go well.
Every year, 1 million patients are visiting our countries for their needs. All the patients all over the world, especially in European countries, they are choosing our country for their health solutions.
But serious problems were all that 45-year-old Pinky was left with. The NHS had recommended gastric surgery, but after waiting for years, she travelled to Turkey, only to be hospitalised with sepsis within weeks of returning to Merseyside.
When I arrived there, a lot of the nurses that I encountered, when I told them my story, they just said, "Another one?" And so I asked, and apparently there was 5 of us on the same ward, all at the same time, all from Turkey. I don't know whereabouts, but all from Turkey.
Now fed solely by tube, the damage done to Pinky's digestive system is so serious it might not be reversible. She's been in and out of hospital since.
It may cost my life. I still don't know that. I have hope, but they have told me to prepare for the possibility, high possibility, that I may never eat or drink again. I was looking for a better future, but my world's got even smaller.
It isn't easy to speak publicly about pain like this, but both Pinky and Amy are determined to be heard.
For me, it's really important for someone that's considering doing this to just at least maybe have a real think about, your life and what you actually want out of your life. And if a body or a bum or teeth or whatever it is actually worth the risk of possibly losing your life.
The grief she carries with her every day, a world away from the gloss and the glamour her sister Sophie was promised. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
And there is more on Rachel's investigation into cosmetic industry's surgeries carried out abroad on our website. Just head to itv.com/news. Let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. The Hollywood star Kevin Spacey wept in the dock today as he was cleared of all charges of sexual assault. He had denied the 9 accusations levelled against him by 4 separate men. And an innocent man has been cleared by the Court of Appeal after being jailed for a rape he did not commit. Andrew Malkinson, who's now 57, served 17 years in prison. And wildfires are still raging tonight in countries around the Mediterranean, destroying properties and threatening yet more lives. Now, in a major climb down, rail users are now being given until September to respond to controversial plans to close nearly every station ticket office in England. There was a huge outcry, you may remember, about the original 3-week public consultation period, which was scheduled to end today. Our consumer editor Chris Choi reports.
Just hours before the consultation deadline on shutting ticket offices, today we got an unexpected timetable change. But for Kevin Greenan in Manchester, it doesn't matter how long possible closures are deliberated, they're a bad idea.
This machine is totally inaccessible to a blind person. There's a button with the braille word help underneath it. Waiting for somebody to answer, and waiting for somebody to answer, and waiting for some... Am I repeating myself? It doesn't work.
The original deadline for the ticket office closure consultation was midnight tonight. Now it's September the 1st. So far, around 170,000 submissions have been made concerning the proposed closure of 974 ticket offices across England. Rail firms say only 12% of tickets are sold from offices, but this one in Waterloo today was busy. If the train company's plans go ahead, more passengers will be relying more heavily on ticket machines like this. But just look, there's a whole list here of things that it can't do. That worries this pensioner who supports ticket modernisation, but not so rapidly.
People need specialised help because our ticket prices aren't clear-cut, you know, and they're not going to give through the machine, in my opinion, the cheapest ticket.
Rail firms stress that staff will be freed from being behind glass screens and offer help more flexibly around stations.
I think because it's important to listen. You know, this is a really big agenda item for the public, for passengers all here at New Street today, and it's important that we listen and we spend time listening.
Many rail users said it had been a small consultation on big proposals, and now that the process has changed, many hope the plan will too. Chris Choi, ITV News at Waterloo Station.
Quick look at foreign news now. And a crane caught fire and collapsed in New York City today, causing a number of injuries. The crane, which was on top of a skyscraper 45 stories above street level, crashed down at around 7:30 in the morning. Officials say 6 people, including 2 firefighters, were hurt. And 1 person has died and several more have been injured in a fire on a cargo ship off the coast of the Netherlands. The ship was carrying around 3,000 cars and the fire is thought to have started in an electric vehicle on board. Now, exercise has always been advocated by doctors and health experts as one of the best ways of reducing blood pressure. But a new study has found that the best sort of exercises of all for this could be the types that involve no movement, known as wall sits and the plank. Pablo Taylor explains.
Today we're going to do wall squats.
In the fight to improve our health, could these exercises be key? Planks and wall squats don't involve much movement, but can still push you to your limit. And now research suggests they could also be especially useful when it comes to lowering our blood pressure.
So when we perform an isometric exercise, the muscle is actually is contracted, but it doesn't change in length. And this actually interrupts the flow of blood through that muscle tissue. When that muscle is then relaxed following the activity, we get an increase in blood flow through that tissue. And we believe it's that change which is important for helping our arteries to relax much more.
The study, involving more than 15,000 people, showed that isometric exercises like wall squats and planks had almost twice the effect on reducing blood pressure compared to running or cycling. They also comfortably beat weight training and high-intensity exercises. And that news was welcomed by members of this gym in Leicester.
I do a lot of abdominal exercises, and my blood pressure has been fairly stable all the way through since I was 30 or 40.
I actually have high blood pressure. I'm on medication, so I'm hoping that that's obviously going to support that medication as well.
It's amazing. I never knew that, so yeah, I will be practicing that from now on, definitely.
The study suggests that we should be holding our planks and wall squats for around 2 minutes, having a 2-minute rest, and then repeating that another 3 times. Although I have to say, easier said than done.
So next time you're in the gym working up a sweat, know that when it comes to lowering blood pressure, less movement might be the key. Pablo Taylor, ITV News.
That's a very sad news. It's just been announced by the Irish Times and the broadcaster RTE in the last few minutes. And the singer Sinead O'Connor has died at the age of 56. She was best known, of course, for her emotional ballad, Nothing Compares to You. #1 in countries right across the world in 1990 and made her a household name. Martha Fairley is with me now in the studio. And Martha, this is just emerging now. It was really sad news. Lots of viewers watching this will be very familiar with Sinead O'Connor.
Yes, that's right, Mary. Sinead O'Connor first came to the public fore with her first album, The Lion and Cobra, released in 1987. But it really was that second album, I Do Not Want What I Have Not Got, with the lead track that we've just heard there, Nothing Compares to You, that made her a worldwide celebrity. Her album sold 7 million copies. That song was named the world #1 single of 1990 by Billboard. RTE, the Irish broadcaster, have released a statement in the last few minutes from her family saying, "It is with great sadness that we announce the passing of our beloved Sinead. Her family and friends are devastated and have requested privacy at this very difficult time." And of course, this comes just a year after the death of Sinead O'Connor's son, who was 17 years old. She was a controversial figure. She was a well-loved figure within the world of music, and she will be very much missed.
She was iconic, wasn't she? Martha Fairley, thank you. Really sad. And there'll be more on Sinead O'Connor's life and amazing career on our website and ITVX throughout the evening. In the meantime, still to come, the children's magazine celebrating its 85th year. How celebrities are taking up residence in Beano Town to celebrate.
And rain is currently spreading its way eastwards to all parts. Stay tuned for the full forecast coming up in just a moment.
Do join me and Alex for that after this short break. See you then. Hello again, welcome back. Now, if June was the hottest on record for that month, July, well, let's just say, I think we can all agree it's been a little bit patchy at best. In fact, with a few days to go, parts of the country have already had their wettest July ever. Alex is here. I'm not blaming you, I'm just asking you, right?
That's the way it feels at the moment, but I wouldn't blame you actually, Mary, because yes, July certainly has been disappointing, and we have been looking at the rainfall for this month so far. There's still a few days to go, but today I thought we'd take a little look at our temperatures, and no surprise, it is certainly cooler than average. So the UK average at the moment, up until yesterday, was 12.6, so that is a little down on where it should be. So it's 0.4 Celsius down, as you can see there, and it's pretty much the same picture for all 4 nations. And worth bearing in mind as well that the last time we saw a July cooler than June was way back in 1970. However, June, as we know, was the warmest, or hottest rather, on record. Let's take a little look at what June was like though. This was beautiful. In fact, I was there on this day and it was absolutely beautiful. Not a cloud in the sky, temperatures way above average, people enjoying the beach. Fast forward to today, and actually this was the surf cam from Bew Beach earlier. Looks like a scene out of, say, winter. Bear in mind, this is the summer holidays. There's virtually no one on it, and you can see the tide is a little rough as well. Let's also take a look at Truro. Of course, lots of people are on holiday in the West Country at the moment. And again, this was the pretty damp scene there this afternoon, and also the Exeter Estuary, also looking pretty bleak earlier today with cloudy skies and also outbreaks of rain. And as we know, that rain is around outside right now. Let's take a look.
Today, it could be pouring in many places, but not for a little while. Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, let's take a look at how things are shaping up outside at the moment. And we'll start with a little look at the pressure pattern. And this is the low pressure, which has brought in that fairly extensive rain, which started in the west earlier today and is steadily making its way eastwards across the country. Behind it, there will be a bit of a respite. But as we head into tomorrow, you can expect more showers and also a fair bit of cloud. So let's put some real detail on it for this evening. And as you can see, that band of rain is pretty far reaching. All parts seeing some outbreaks of rain as we head through the next few hours into the small hours of Thursday as well. We're also going to be left with a legacy of cloud cover. So a lot of moisture in there as well. That will actually lead to some mist and fog patches you can just about make out here out towards the southwest. So a murky start to the day tomorrow. So let's head into tomorrow, and it will be a pretty mild start to the day. We'll gradually see the bulk of the rain clearing into the North Sea, but behind it, it stays on the damp side with further bits and pieces of drizzle at times. And you can see that we hold on to a fair bit of cloud cover. However, a few spells of brightness may appear out towards, say, East Anglia around the Wash area. Temperatures, though, not too bad. In the south, 23, 24 degrees Celsius, but perhaps feeling a little cooler because of the cloud cover. Across the north, more like 19 to 20. And then looking further ahead, Friday, expect more showers, but not as many as we've seen in previous days this week.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Yeah, so it's not a pretty picture out there at the moment. As I say, that rain steadily making its way north eastwards, but tomorrow, afraid more showers and also a fair bit of cloud.
OK, Alex, thank you. And finally, the world's longest-running comic is celebrating a landmark birthday in cheeky good health. Believe it or not, the Beano is 85 years old this week and still going strong. And for that big anniversary, its cast of familiar characters, like Dennis the Menace, of course, is being joined by some very special guests. Rishi Davda reports.
Uh-oh, this isn't exactly the big break I was expecting.
A weekly comic that grew beyond its pages into TV shows and board games. The world of Beano began in the late 30s and quickly became a supermarket shelf staple.
Oh, he looks like a Martian.
Beano bosses put its success down to the storyline being based around children.
Beano brought in normal kids, regular kids. None of them have got superpowers. Well, Banana Man maybe, but none of them have got superpowers. And what that's allowed us to do is continually update Beano for each generation. So Beano always lives in the moment.
Now, to celebrate 85 years, they're releasing a special anniversary edition with a whole host of celebrity appearances, including Stormzy, Harry Styles and Lewis Hamilton. The King and Queen have been illustrated too, not their first meeting with the menace, that is Dennis.
There have been more than 4,100 issues of the Beano printed since it first launched back in 1938, with over 70,000 comic strips and around 700 different characters.
Dennis and Nasha, Billy Whiz and the Bash Street Kids are just a few of the most famous faces. Faces that in recent years have changed in a conscious effort to become more reflective of a modern-day society. Experts say Beano has always tried to be different.
Really early on, they were introducing female characters, and it made it fun and enjoyable for girls to read and relevant to them. And that's obviously 50% of your possible readership. You know, so the Beano from the early days have been finding ways to be culturally relevant, bring in new audiences, and they continue to do that today, and it's why they thrived.
It'll be home time before you know it.
The comics creators firmly believe that Beano brings joy, because being a kid never gets old. Rishi Davda, ITV News.
And that is it for now. Tom's here at 10, but from me and all the evening news team, bye-bye.